Let's go ahead and get started. I'm on, Joe is on, Skip is on, Alfred is on, Janet is on, Will is on. Did I miss anyone? Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. Next order of business would be to review and approve the notes of meeting from our November 30th meeting. So do people need a few minutes to read them?
I have one on, this is Skip, on number 5. Is it appropriate to put the date down where it says scheduled for Thursday instead of Thursday and some date, which I think it should be 12/3 if it is?
Yeah, that's a good point. That's
Would be 2 weeks after the 30th, or no,
no, it was
30th.
it was that same week, which is why I just said on for Thursday of that same week. But I think clarifying it by adding the date would be appropriate.
That was the meeting to approve the contract, right?
No, item 5 just said GEI pre-dredge survey is scheduled for Thursday.
Okay.
And it was discussed on November 30th. So as Skip rightly noted, it would have been on the 3rd.
Yep. Okay.
And I can add that.
Good.
Chris, on number 2, action item list, item 2.
Oh, yes.
AIL, the open meeting law, they like to have it identified.
I thought up above it was sufficient, but I can put the parenthetical up above. Right above there, it says action item list, but I'll add the parenthetical for AIL. Does that satisfy it, Joe? If they,
yeah, I think once you define it for the rest of the minutes, you can use the abbreviation.
Okay, so I'll add the abbreviation. Any other comments? Okay, so let's we could entertain a motion to accept the minutes of the meeting from November 30th as presented and as amended, specifically item number 2 and item number 5, in which case I'll reissue it as Rev 1.
I move the November 30th, 2020 minutes of the Wellfleet Dredging Task Force Committee on items 2 and 5.
Okay, second?
I'll second them.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
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 No. Any nays? Okay, they pass as modified 4-0. Under administrative, still one note. I guess by January the 29th, we have to submit a write-up for the 2020 annual report. And as I understand it, and Joe, you've certainly done this many times for the Marine Advisory, it appears we would do a draft and then the Dredging Task Force would review it and edit, modify, and ultimately accept such a report for submittal?
Yeah.
So in the near term, we'll come up with a draft and circulate it for everybody's review and comment.
Yeah, they like it brief, to fit on one page.
Okay, on the action item list on the agenda, just a note that there were no new items to discuss this week, so I think we can move on to the next agenda item. And for the next agenda item, I'd like to skip over number 3 for now. We'll come back to it. Let's move on to number 4, which is the status of the town dredging. And I guess, Will, since you're ringside, if you could give us an update.
They put out the silt fence today.
Hmm.
That went up, that went all surrounding the project, and they started digging. They have the barge in place, the tugboat, the push boat. All crews are out there by the time that I left, continually digging. And they plan on keeping on going until probably this week when the weather comes in and shuts them down a little bit.
Right.
Chris, can I interrupt for a second? Kurt Felix is trying to get on, and you're the co-host. So somewhere on co-host, you should be able to see on the right-hand side, allow in.
I'm not a co-host.
There we go.
You are, you actually a host, I'm sorry.
He's in now.
Oh, no, Will is. Okay, Courtney changed it all around. Will is. Okay, you let Kurt in, Will?
I did.
Okay,
Kurt, are you in?
yes. He's at the Cape Cod Mosque.
I am here. Sorry about that. I was having trouble finding the link.
Okay, so just to summarize, Kurt, we skipped down to the status of town dredging, and Will just shared with us that Cashman installed a silk fence today, and they started dredging today. So we're off to the races.
Fantastic. Wow. Congratulations.
So let's skip back to number 3, permits, and Joe, maybe an update on that. Not too much since our last call, but an update nonetheless.
Yeah. Now that the piggyback dredging operation has started, we're going to keep an eye on that and focus on the rest of Area 1. If the piggyback is completed as we plan, that will put a significant dent in the challenge of dredging all of Area 1. We have discussed moving ahead with GEI on filing an amendment in the piggyback area from the float piles to the bulkhead. That process has to begin soon because GEI is working on one for the town of Salem, and it's been running 6 months. So we're going to move ahead on that, as well as getting an RFP out for that, as well as putting in place the pieces for the rest of Area 1 for the fall.
So the next step, though, on that amendment is we, meaning the town, will have to solicit a proposal from GEI for them to do the permit amendment work. So that's on our to-do list. We'll catch up with Mike Travato. We can maybe provide some draft language as to what that request could look like, if that helps facilitate it.
Yeah, and GEI indicated they're going to help us with that language. And we're also at the same time going to be working on securing the permit for Area 2 for the fall of 2022. And we are working on submitting a packet to the new chief we have to deal with in that division in the Army Corps of Engineers um, for her review and to get the ball rolling for Area 2.
So Joe, excuse me, do you mean fall of 2022 or fall of 2021?
In the fall of 2021,
Okay,
we are going to be completing Area 1, which is from the Harbor Masters area around the pier in the back, including all of the boat slips. That's Area 1. Hopefully that'll be completed in the fall of 2021. Then the following year, the focus would be on the mooring field, which we refer to as Area 2.
But from a permit perspective, we'll set the plan and the schedule so that we have and hopefully have the permit for Area 2 in time for 2021, because the quantities in Area 1 are not as much as large as Area 2. So it'd be nice to be able to take at least a bite out of some of Area 2. To do that, we need the permit. So as we go forward and we talk about timeline, that would be the driver for getting the permit in time for 2021.
Yeah,
That was an
and
issue that came up before too, Chris, in terms of how much, I don't know how far they're going to get on the piggyback of Area 1, but, there was a question some time ago about whether the balance of Area 1 and Area 2 could be done in a single year, or put out an RFP to that, to that effect, to see if somebody could actually complete it in a year, which would save the mob demob for having to do it in a third year.
well,
Yeah, it's a pretty heavy lift. It'd be for 33, it'd be like 370,000 yards thereabouts in a single season. But in a few minutes, we're going to talk about future plans and how we structure these packages. But again, all the more reason where we would certainly want the option. If we get out in front of it in 2021, we want to get to Area 2.
there's another reason there, Kurt, and that is the area of funding. The advantage to breaking it up into 2 years is for state funding purposes. The likelihood of their giving us everything in 1 year is very, very small. So, we'd be submitting 2 separate grant applications in 2 years, which we think will provide us considerably more funding.
Actually, those comments are a pretty good segue into our next agenda item, which is upcoming plans and requirements. And so Joe and I have been working on some draft documents, including a bar chart schedule for everything we have to do in 21 and 22, listing what those packages would be, what the permit requirements would be. And so what I plan to do is just tidy it up, and I'll send it out to people tomorrow as a draft, certainly for review and comment. And we want to really focus on these documents at our next meeting. So between now and then, review them. As I will note in the email, send everyone your comments, and I can consolidate them before the next meeting. But then we'll have a good comprehensive discussion about it. So, and you can see how the packages are structured and the timeline. Several nuances. We think on the back side, when we do the dredging on the north access where the slips are, we're going to have to pull the piling and replace them. So that's another piece of the puzzle that would occur after the 21 dredging in the very early spring of 22, before the boating season starts. The piling would have to be in. So you'll see that laid out in bar chart form, and I'm sure it can solicit some comments and opinions and improvements. And then, like I said, another document will just describe what we see as making up the various packages and the various tasks. So if you would be on the lookout for that tomorrow, take time to review it. I'm asking for comments back, say by the 23rd, because I assume, which we'll know in a few minutes, I assume our next meeting will be on the 28th. And so that would be the appropriate time to really focus on the next 2 years worth of activities.
Do we have to have put out a request to GEI for a submission of a quote on doing these additional engineering in
Yes.
both areas of?
Yes, and you'll see there's a listing that tells what we think those various requests for proposals include. There's about 4 of them, Skip. And then on the bar chart, it shows when we need to request that in order for them to turn it around, submit it, town to review it, and make the award. So it's laid out in sequential form for review. That's pretty much covers the agenda unless people have any other questions or comments or suggestions.
Yeah, just one other question. Joe had mentioned about the modification to the permit to, include the bulkhead area that we had talked about previously.
Yes.
The other thing I noted and I sent an email to this effect, but we only have a 1 foot over dig in the current permit. And we had talked at some length about doing a 2 foot over dig. And I'm wondering if that would make sense, as part of the permit modifications.
Yeah, we spoke to GEI about that, and what they advised us is that would automatically change it from a maintenance dredging to new dredging. And at that point, we lost our appetite.
It would open up a huge can of worms. And
That
probably
seems cra-
take an
that seems
additional year to complete.
Yeah, no, I can appreciate that. It seems crazy. That seems kind of crazy. It's an existing dredge. Why does it open it up to new dredge? That's
Because my understanding is because we've not dredged deeper than the -6 before. -6 plus 1 foot.
oh. So our historic precedent is for a 1 foot over dredge.
Yes.
But
Yikes.
has anybody actually looked to see what the original dredge depth in there was in 1954?
Speaking for myself, I have not.
Nor have I. I just thought of this now.
Yeah.
Because if we did a dredge after that in the 80s, which we did, and we actually went down to a deeper depth, at that point it would still be maintenance because we wouldn't be there 50-year period.
The comment, I'm sorry, go ahead.
So I don't think we want to open up to a new permit. I think that's dangerous. The question I have is, GEI, the day he spoke, may have only spoke out of the documents he's seen, and whether or not the documents that were there prior to him may show a different elevation for depth. That's my question. And we should maybe look at that because some of the plans that were drawn by Bourne Consulting he hadn't looked at. So maybe we should get all the folders out and see what actually exists.
Yeah, that's a good.
I
Alf,
think
that's a good point.
that would merit strong consideration. The GEI engineer stated to Chris and I that they were going by drawings submitted by the Harbor Master's office dated 2016. And that's why they couldn't be modified. But it seems that we really need to take a look earlier than that and may find something, as Alfred is saying, that would bolster the case.
We'll go ahead and probe that some more with GEI and any other drawings. Alfred, do you have some of the really old drawings, or are they in the files?
They might as well be. The key would be to find any kind of drawing or estimated plan that would have been at that time period, and what it might exist of that now. The documents that were submitted in 2016 by the Harbor Master's Office came from Bourne Consulting. So that is the prior documents that they would have in Bourne Consulting. But we could dig up anything that we could find related to what may be said as a depth.
Yeah. Yeah, see if you can find what the depth was for LD Baker when he first brought bananas.
Yeah, seriously.
But the question I have, Will, is I don't think that Bourne actually was at one of our original dredges prior to that.
No, I was going off of Joe's comment, the ones that were submitted by the Harbor Master's Office. I was clearing that was submitted by Bourne Consulting through the Harbor Master's Office. Anything historic that we could look up through the town would be a random act of luck, probably from the 50s, but we can certainly look for anything.
No, we had dredging after that, so I mean, I guess we'd have to pick the year and find out who we spent. I'm not so sure that we're going to get a clear answer on this, because I don't know who to look through, because at one point the state was providing us with the plans.
Correct.
So we'd have to maybe find a year, see what the Waterways has on file for that year, if they can go in the archives. And at that point, maybe, I mean, this could be all a waste of time, but if it comes back to where the overdig was 2 or 3 feet difference of the elevation, then we're not asking GEI to apply for a new plan. We're asking them to amend it to the original depth that was done. Is that correct?
Presumably, yes.
Two thoughts on that. One, if we go back to the last dredging in 2001, I believe it was Bourne that was the town's engineer, Russell Titmus, who is now a vice president of GEI. Presumably, they have the Bourne files. So the other thought would be to check with the State Division of Waterways, who up until this project always oversaw dredging.
I don't disagree, Joe. My question is, Bourne had to get those numbers from somebody.
Yeah.
So they should, in their original document, to get that done, they had to prove or show cause for where those numbers came from. Maybe they can turn us on to the original paperwork.
Well, if Russell Titmus was the one who did it in 2001, I think he is the guy that, should access them and do the research for us, given that he's now part of GEI.
We'll reach out to GEI for that, including Russell. But then also, if anyone has any archival records, maybe take a look at it. Will, I don't know how far back the files go, but if you could take a quick look at that, and then we could review some of the other information. There were write-ups about dredging, just in case there was something that either defined the over dredge as 2 feet or the depth or something. I think it's a bit of a long shot, but I think it's worth pursuing.
Chris, I didn't see any in those 2 cartons you and I went through that were provided by the town.
Yeah.
That had any documents with those types of drawings.
It might even be stated at that point, if we can go back far enough.
Yeah. Yeah, Skip, I was going to go back and look at some of those, because at the time we were focused on anything to do with South Mooring when we were going through that stuff, or at least I was.
All right, so if I can get the library, is that where we got them from? They should still be there. and then we can start looking through them.
Okay. Okay, anything else before we move on to schedule our next meeting? So
I don't have anything.
the 2-week clock would put us on December 28th at 7 PM. Is that good for everyone?
Good here.
Works for me.
Okay,
I'll be here.
we'll do
Okay,
that.
good.
And then one other thing before we entertain a motion to adjourn. Courtney, thank you so much for all the work you've done with us and setting up the meetings and the Zoom and everything else. And I think I can speak on behalf of the entire task force to wish you well in your new assignment.
It's off, but she'll hear the recording.
I don't think Courtney's on.
She's not anymore.
No.
But yeah, I agree. I'll be sure to tell her too if I see her.
Okay. All right, let's entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Who was that, Kurt?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And a second?
Skip. I move to adjourn.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed say nay. And so it looks like it passed. That one almost always passes, doesn't it?
Good holidays to everybody.
5-0. Okay,
Yes. Everybody have a great holiday season, and we'll convene the 28th.
right. Okay.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Good night.